Um, okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone. Good morning where I am. Good evening, good afternoon. My name is Michelle Gyani, and thank you so much, Zubair Saab, for joining us today. I will start with a little bit of a brief introduction about myself and our series, and then an introduction about you, and then we'll hand it over to you to begin our session. I work as the manager for Gallup Pakistan's public health program, and we started this series called Let's Talk Public Health about a year ago. And we've brought different experts on board who are working in Pakistan to discuss several different issues. The point is to have public health become a part of discourse, especially in Pakistan, and we've had a couple of different discussions on family planning, on international health regulations, on NCDs also before. And for those of you who don't know what NCDs are, they're non-communicable diseases. And so it's always been an enlightening discussion, and especially given Pakistan does have a lot of public health problems and issues. So it's always good to just get experts' opinions and just have those discussions. We are joined today by Zubair Faisal Abbasi Saab, and he is an international development policy specialist and the founder of Impact Research International. And he's currently working on public health research projects in collaboration with the Center for Peace and Development Initiatives, which is focused on tackling the industrially produced trans fatty acids in the food supply. I'm personally very excited about this topic because we are looking at some policy side discussions regarding NCDs, especially when it comes to the commercial determinants of NCDs. I currently also work for a center on commercial determinants, so I'm very excited to have this discussion. And I think I'm going to hand it over to you now, Zubair Saab, and we can just dive right into it.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction and everything. Actually, I was a little delayed because of traffic jams, and I had a lot of meetings I was running around because we are at a critical moment in sort of a policy change in Pakistan, whereby Ministry of Science and Technology through Pakistan Pakistan Standard and Quality Control Authority, they are uh, they are in the process of creating regulation to reduce presence of trans fatty acids in food supply. So I had to run around, and today my meetings were more about how to change the structure of food subsidies in Pakistan. I will come back to this point later. My actually session was a little bit delayed because of my engagement with these setups. So primarily, what I think that the talk which I tried to structure was around diets, diseases, and the policies. Usually, what people do is whenever you talk to the system of governance or to industry or to anyone else, they say that all diets have to be managed through public awareness. So they stress the importance of raising public awareness about food qualities and stuff like that. However, what we have seen around the world, that if you really want to influence health outcomes, you want to promote good health, or you want to reduce dietary risk factors, then you have to have certain type of policy regimes so that everyone is safe, all food is safe. So this is all food. This is something which is very important. It is not that you give choice to people whether you want to buy a 24 carat poison or 22 carat poison or 18 carat poison. It is that you don't provide them poison. So choice is not between fully unhealthy food and partially unhealthy food. The choice is between healthy food or not healthy food. So policy should be geared up to reduce the incidence of unhealthy foods. So uh, coming to my point is that if you look at global health policy agenda, there are at least three things which are important to discuss. One is the diet part, dietary risk factor. Number two is lifestyles. Number three is availability of standard treatments. Uh, and another factor which actually influences these three points, that dietary risk factors, lifestyles, and standard availability and accessibility of standard treatments, is the system of food governance. I'm looking at the issue of those diseases in which our dietary intake is a risk factor. And these diseases are primarily cancers, diabetes, uh, obesity, and as well as hypertension. So these three or four diseases, set of diseases, uh, which are basically of concern. And the dietary risk factors which are associated with these diseases, cancers, diabetes, obesity, and hypertension, are three. One is added sugars. The second one is sodium. And the third one is fats. So we can add tobacco as well, but because that is not a food. So, but tobacco is exactly it is harmful to human health exactly the way these added sugars, sodiums, and fats are. So my project with the CPDA, Center for Peace and Development Initiatives, is very much focused on one key ingredient out of these three, is the availability or the supply of industrially produced trans fatty acids in food supply. So uh, what we are trying is that all our food should be safe. So where are we now in terms of policy? Where Pakistan stands at the global map? Uh, there are WHO categorizes countries into set of or three groups of countries. The first group is where the best policy practice is implemented. The second is which are partially compliant with best policy practice. And the third group of countries is where the policy either does not exist, or they are not, their population is vulnerable to these NCDs and vulnerable to the consumption of harmful ingredients. Added sugar means they consume higher level of sugars there, and the probability of finding people with higher glycemic index is there, and more people are as compared to other countries, people are vulnerable or they are hypertensive, uh, and they consume more fat, and there is a tendency of all diseases like obesity and diabetes, endocrine disease, and others by means of consumption of fat. So number one is the best practice countries. The second one is partially compliant countries, and the third one is not compliant. So Pakistan actually falls in the group of countries which are partially compliant. Why it is partially compliant country? Because our food governance or food safety standards, the policies which ensure quality of food, are not best practice. For example, if I talk about industrially produced trans fatty acids, uh, Pakistan's uh, PSQCA, which is mandated by constitution, it is mandated to develop standards and then send it out to the provincial food authorities for implementation, and also send it out to the industry and other government departments to comply with that regulation. They have very slowly developed this criteria of WHO recommended criteria that there should ITFAs should not be more than 2% of uh, any food, especially our vanaspati ghee, oils and fats basically, and bakery shortenings or biscuits. All these foods should not have more than 2% of ITFA in them. Uh, Actually, this debate around industrially produced trans fatty acids, which are found in great supply, in higher supply, in two things. One is our vanaspati ghee with granular structure. When they transform oils into, they partially hydrogenate it and create ghee. Vanaspati ghee, which is part of almost every food in Pakistan, uh, even ice creams or chocolates or the tea whiteners or anything. There are many foods which I don't even remember. Samosa, non-unpackaged food. These industrially produced trans fatty acids are higher in quantity. And the debate, when clear scientific evidence in clear terms started coming in, that all those societies or all those communities which consume uh, higher than 2% of industrially trans fatty acids in their food supply, the incidence of cardiovascular diseases and obesity and diabetes is higher. And then governments started taking action back in 1980s and 90s, especially 90s, late 90s. Countries like Denmark, New York, and cities like New York, they started uh, developing standards to restrict industrially produced trans fatty acids in food supply. And they kept on measuring the incidence of cardiovascular diseases. And evidence is very clear that when you reduce industrially produced trans fatty acids in food supply and people start consuming less oil and food, then cardiovascular diseases actually decline, especially the vulnerable age group, which is between 30 to 70. Less and less people they catch this disease, and less they die prematurely. So the evidence started becoming very clear. And in 2018, WHO recommended all countries of the world to manage ITFAs in food supply. And Pakistan being part of those agreements, Pakistan also wanted to start a roadmap or a plan of action in which there was a grace period for the industry to change their techniques of production and turn to healthy fats rather than producing unhealthy fats, which are full of ITFAs. However, the time frame which was given was between 2018 to 2023, and we have missed that deadline. We did change our policies, our standards in food supply, but uh, at this moment, even in June 2023, the last meeting of National Standards Committee of PSQCA, which actually recommends or makes it mandatory for all foods, for certain type of foods. I will mention it again, that why I said certain type of foods and why not all foods. Uh, they said in June that 2% is the limit. And before that, Pakistan did not have 2% limit. It was 10% and 5%. And there was a time when uh, there was no limit at all. So, but because WHO was making this point that food should be safe from ITFAs, different provincial food authorities, they had different standards. For example, Punjab Food Authority, they entirely banned uh, this partially hydrogenated oil or vanaspati ghee, so that once that fat is banned, so all foods which are using unhealthy fat will be safe automatically, which was a best one of the best practice policies. However, KP had a different regime. Balochistan did not have any limit, and Sindh Food Authority had 5% limit, which is compliant with the PSQCA standards. However, Punjab was the most progressive in that sense. What happened that into 2019 and 2020, uh, the ghee industry, they went to litigation and they started a case against Punjab Food Authority and prayed for lifting the ban and letting this ingredient come into the food supply, which is very unfortunate actually. At the same time, industry somehow approached Council of Common Interest and Lahore High Court. They decided that because industry is satisfied that this standard making should be shifted to PSQCO rather than provincial food authorities. So this ban is lifted, and everyone is uh, can produce vanaspati ghee. And matter was handed over to the Council of Common Interest and through Council of Common Interest to the PSQCA. So now, where we stand at this moment after all this litigation and debate and perhaps loss of governance, food governance in Pakistan, that PSQCA is mandated to create standards. PSQCA has a history of standard making when they were part of Ministry of Industries, and they created standards for engineering goods. What kind of nuts and bolts and chair and cars and trucks and tires and tubes and stuff like that. They were creating standards, and they treated every item separately. And following that legacy, this institution started treating food like bits and pieces. So, by means of that institutional way of working, they created a list of 14 foods, and they said that if these foods, so we should make standards for these 14, actually these are five foods, and other are derivatives. So they basically created 2% limit for vanaspati ghee and for bakery shortenings, biscuits, uh, and a couple of more. It does not have ice cream in it. I have forgotten exactly, but major items are these: bakery ware, bakery shortenings, biscuits, and vanaspati ghee and oils, basically. So these five items were identified as potentially dangerous, and rest of the food was not covered. So my organization and a couple of other partners, we are including Heartfile, and Heartfile is a very famous organization. We are struggling. We are advocating the case that all food should be covered. All food is a best policy practice. So because Pakistan does not fall into the best practice policy, so it is partially compliant, and our population is still vulnerable to all these diseases or dietary risk factors, uh, which are associated with cancers, diabetes, obesity, and hypertension. So this is where the policy lag is there in Pakistan, and this is one of the public health concerns. And by public health concerns, also I mean that this is a problem of food governance in Pakistan that we must address. So, what we are trying to address, number one, we are advocating that there should be change in policies. So, like India, like Bangladesh, like 65 other countries, all foods should be covered with one regulation. So you just make it criminal that anyone who produces more than 2% of industrially produced trans fatty acids has to be dealt with. They must be banned. They must go through the system of law, and they must not be allowed to uh, induce that ingredient into food supply in Pakistan. Number two, what we are trying to do is, which was actually our meeting with the Ministry of Industries and Utility Stores Corporation of Pakistan, and we're writing letters to every ministry in Pakistan that they should not subsidize or procure food which is which has higher content of industrially produced trans fatty acids. Uh, Minis- uh, uh, and they should not subsidize, they should not procure food, and they should not subsidize unhealthy food. So we have requested them not to subsidize added sugars or any food which consumes a higher quantity of and gives higher quantity of sugars and ITFA, and also sodium. So there should be food labeling on food items which are sold at Utility Stores Corporation. Starting with this, we are requesting PSQCA to make it mandatory for all food producers in Pakistan to go for front of packet labeling, so that people know that it has higher level of sugars, whatever the level is, and in clear terms, so that people know that how much quantity they are consuming, like sugary drinks. ITFA, how much ITFA is there, whether it is less than 5% or higher. Even if it is 2%, they must mention it, because once if 2% is there, then once you fry at higher temperature, it goes up to 5 to 6%, which becomes harmful. So all those fats which have 2% of ITFA cannot be used for high temperature frying. Uh, so One is that not to procure such food by the government agencies, so that these are discouraged. Second, do not subsidize uh, ghee, which has higher level of ITFAs, or at sugars. This is a political question. We know that uh, it will have problems when they decide about it. People, because now Ramzan is coming and everyone will demand cheaper food basket. So people will request the governments to subsidize oils and ghee and sugar. And this is again a matter of concern, because our people are not being educated that these three ingredients, sodium, sugar, and fats, are associated with NCDs. So they will demand it. So we have to have an awareness campaign. The last thing that we are trying is to request the industry as well, not to use those technologies which allow, or they actually cause uh, a higher level production of higher level of industrially produced trans fatty acids. So it is possible that industry can avoid partial hydrogenation, because partial hydrogenation is a process in which they add nickel, and nickel is used as a catalyst, but it cannot be 100% removed from the food supply. So once traces are there and people consume it, it becomes pro-oxidant, and free radicals are there, and it causes cancers. So you have to stop actually this partial hydrogenation process in one way or the other, or use the technology uh, which is called virtually trans fatty acids. This is not a scientific term. This is not in the textbooks of academia. This is industrially generated terms, which I don't even subscribe to, virtually trans fatty acid free, VTF, which they call, because it still has 0.5% or more of trans fats. And we recently conducted a survey in which some brands which claim to be VTF, they still have more than 5% of ITFs in them. So that is something which is very, very deceptive as well. So we are trying these three things. First, improve regulation, cover all foods. Number two, create awareness. Number three, ask the industry to reduce production of trans fats. And so this is where uh, I will stop for questions if you might have any questions. Uh, just I will summarize that we have three problems: dietary risk factors, lifestyles. People have become sedentary, physical activity has gone down. We have to increase that. and availability of standard treatments has to be there. The first one, dietary risk factors, is perhaps something which is modifiable, which we can even lifestyles are also modifiable. So we need to work on it. And at the same time, we need to improve our system of food governance so that we have lesser incidence of premature death before the age of 70, and we have less disease and disability, and we have better brains, better bodies. People live longer, live healthy life, and they serve their family and the country well. Thank you very much. So nice of you.
Thank you so much, Zubair Saab. That's actually very, very informative. Um, I think I do have a couple of questions. I do see a hand up, so I will give it to you as well, Fatma. So my first question is one, in terms of the policy adoption or policy implementation. Uh, we know that, of course, like you're targeting, production of, like, say, ghee or oil, and that's also like industrially produced. But when it comes to having products available at utility stores, or at least when I think of it, it seems like that you have these well-known and renowned brands, but then there are also utility stores that might have these products which are not very well now well known produced brands or anything. So how, like, it seems like an incredibly massive endeavor to ensure that everybody who is producing ghee or oil will be complying with the 2% policy that you have in place. So how are you, or how is the country going about ensuring that? I think that's my first question. And if that is to be ensured, what, in terms of the timeline, like how long would it take to go from actually formulating the policy to policy implementation? So, because I understand that there are obviously different levels of, you know, um, different levels involved in the process. So, if you can just like elaborate a little bit on that, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, mm, this is a very good question, and this is a serious challenge for Pakistan. That policy adoption and also policy implementation. Uh, and also what we call conducive environment in which this policy is actually operationalized. At this moment, however, the governance of Pakistan's food system is concerned, PSQCA is mandated to create standards, and provincial food authorities are meant to implement these standards. So at this moment, the five food items which I mentioned earlier, vanaspati ghee, biscuits, bakery ware, and shortenings, these are covered. And now provincial food authorities have to go into the implementation phase. They have that SRO has been issued, and food authorities now have to speak to the industry and ask them to get within the limits and do it immediately, because they have been given a grace period earlier as well. However, there has been a leakage that during the last government of PDM, there was a gentleman at the Ministry of, not at the Ministry, at the Prime Minister's office, who started working with the industry, and he actually started to maneuver things in a way that industry gets more time and more time and then more time, so that they don't have to change their technique of production or technology. So it somehow caused some delay, but hopefully this time, when new government is set in, we spoke to the Utility Stores Corporation and the Ministry of Industries, because we knew that officers who are there are more conscientious, and they will speak to the Prime Minister and Prime Minister in waiting shortly, and hopefully things will gear up for better implementation. However, there is a slip between cup and the lip, and that is actually implementation. And for implementation, you require administrative machinery, which most of food provincial food authorities they have. However, they do not have the testing capacity so that they can test and certify that food is safe or unsafe, and then penalize the perpetrator. At this moment, Pakistan has only one lab, that is in Karachi, which is PCSIR, and that lab is that was strengthened by technical support from World Health Organization, and it was done only a couple of years ago. So we have a limited capacity of testing. We need to increase our testing capacity. We should have, like India. India has, I think, more than 80 centers across India to test food for harmful ingredients, which includes ITFA as well. So Pakistan has only one lab, and their testing capacity is very limited. So for implementation, we need to have testing capacity. And at the same time, we need to have better courts. Perhaps we need to educate our lawyers, where we are working. When I say a system of food governance, we do not have a real advocates for food safety. So we need to work with the legal profession as well. We have to work with judicial academy as well, and also with officers in civil administration too. Uh, so one is the governance side, which you said. So I told you about the problems which are there, and we are hopeful that in coming days Pakistan will take solid steps in policy formulation, that all foods are covered, and implementation, and we have mechanisms geared up. But it will take time. I do not want to paint a rosy picture, but resolve is there. Many players are working. Not many, but at least four or five organizations are very serious. But there is an industry which, very interestingly, when they sell, they manufacture biscuits, and the biscuits which they export has less ITFA and is compliant with international standards. But biscuits, when there's the same brand, the same packaging, when they sell it in Pakistan, it has higher level of ITFA. So industry must also learn how to have a heart to save Pakistani population as well. And the last thing, which is a dietary risk factor, and it is also part of lifestyle, is actually consumption of these ingredients. Whatever, even if oil is safe, even if we ban partially hydrogenated oil or PHO, even then, if we consume higher quantity of oils and fats, we are vulnerable to diseases.
Mhm.
What I see that WHO has recommendation that not more than 4 to 5 kg per person per year oil or fat can be consumed. But in Pakistan, we have a tendency to consume more than 25 kg per person per year. So it is many times higher than uh, the fat which may be safe to consume, and it's not a dietary risk factor. So our dietary intake, our consumption is higher. So we have to work on the production side, the governance side, and also on the consumption side. So all these things work in harmony, or they are in sync, then our policy effectiveness is really great. So yeah, hopefully I answered your question. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, to your point, where, of course, like if you're providing people with even a safe to consume product, I think when you look at the behavioral side of it, even if you give somebody, like a safe product, you can't guarantee how they're going to use it, or whether they're going to know, whether to use it in a way that's beneficial to them or not. And I think that, of course, like comes from more on the demand side, interventions which are also needed. But my other question is that we know that PFA is mandated with the responsibility for the policy implementation, but is there like some mechanism in place that, for example, we've introduced the 2%, rule, and would there be like a frequency with which PFA would be going in to check, that these industries are complying with that 2% rule, and if they're not, what is the process of holding these industries accountable? What does that look like? Like, is there, like, say, for example, every 3 months there's a review where PFA is, is doing that, going in and checking the check and balance thing, and if that does not, if an industry is not complying, then what that process looks like.
Yeah, actually, these things have to be sorted out as yet. This is why Pakistan is partially compliant. But you're right uh, on pointing out this lacuna actually. This implementation phase is very important, and linked with this implementation is monitoring and evaluation or assessment of food supplies. If you look at WHO's Replace program, Replace is you can search it in Google. That WHO has a very clear roadmap, which is called Replace, that review, evaluate, uh, produce healthy alternatives, and also have evaluation plans or monitoring, which you are saying that periodically you have to test samples, and they have a methodology of picking samples, because you cannot have only convenience samples. You have to have fully truly randomized sampling so that you get the reliability. Actually, Gallup is very good in in those techniques, that how you actually collect samples so that it gives you exact picture of the larger scene. So that miniature has to be very closely linked with the larger picture. Uh, we are in the process of uh, we have already identified a partner with whom we will discuss this implementation plan, and then we will have sessions with food authorities, and we will we will provide technical assistance to them to develop these plans according to WHO recommendations, so that this system is in place. And we will also assist them at least in the first phase of testing. So we will request them to collect samples, and there will be a methodology in which almost every product of oil and ghee is tested at least once. Uh, we are going to work on it, but at this moment, the penal system, how they will be penalized, or how they will ensure. Partly it is part of the acts. I think they can ban some factories. They can lock them down. They can ensure fines, and they have the legal provisions to take administrative actions. That is there. However, for example, once you fine a firm, they go to the court, then court asks for the evidence. The evidence is that product, they show the results of the test. But if that test is not available, or verifiable test is not available, because Pakistan has only one lab. So courts go by evidence, and evidence has to be by the accredited lab, accredited by WHO, which is acceptable to the government and to the industry. So this is where we stand at the moment. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, this implementation question will have some good news. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, I think for Pakistan, always the implementation side of things has always been a bit challenging. I do want to open it up to anybody else who would like to ask some questions as well. Um, I think Fatma, you had your hand up earlier. I'm
Yes,
not sure if
thank you so
you.
much. It was a very insightful session, and me and my colleague Zoya, we thoroughly enjoyed it. Zoya is our engagement associate, and we were listening very intently to it. So, I have a few questions on the demand side of it. So, when we were studying beet fortification, there were challenges because people were not willing to accept it, that the fortified wheat is going to alter the taste and texture of it, and also the price point. So I understand that why the consumers do gravitate towards trans fatty these oils which have a high proportion of it. So what is the alternative? Because as you said that it will take us some time to reach that point where we have more labs, and where we can ensure that the implementation gaps are addressed. But what are some of the alternatives that we are offering to the consumer who is going to bear the price of consuming a good product? Is it going to be the consumer? Is it going to be the government? And also, a lot of times, these donors and different partners such as WHO, Nutrition International, they do provide a lot of technical assistance in installing those machineries that you mentioned as well. But there isn't a compliance mechanism. And this is what we observed with wheat fortification as well, that they removed the wheat fortifying machines, and they just went back to their old methods. So these are some of the questions that I had in mind in terms of price and in terms of social behavior change. And if you could explain a little bit, it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very important question, and this WHO replace package, it actually addresses this question. So to me, the problem is that why people consume partially hydrogenated oil, and why it is produced. So the first point is that it is produced because it ensures longevity of food. So shelf life is higher. And the second is that the trans fats, people feel the taste is better. And because in Pakistan and South Asia, actually, it came as a replacement of desi ghee. Desi ghee has a texture; it is granular. So this look-alike ghee is partially hydrogenated oil. So partially hydrogenated oil give texture to food, like bakar khani, which is used in our breakfast. It cannot be manufactured if ITFA is less than 15%. So you have to have higher level of ITFA. ITFA is like a concrete. So you have to add more and more concrete to give it a structure. And that concrete actually builds wall in your cardiovascular system, and it causes all these diseases. So you give texture to food, but you disfigure your body. So the point is that people should know that you want to have a texture or you want to have good health. However, alternative is that you can reduce, there technology is available that you can reduce ITFAs in while manufacturing ghee. You have to replace your machinery which is used for production of PHO, so that you produce less trans fatty acids during the process. Then there is also a technique which is called blending, which is not really a very good technique, but by blending, you don't partially hydrogenate oils, and you use other techniques, and you create that structure in fats which looks like ghee. So alternatives are there. Other countries like Saudi Arabia, they banned PHO, but they still provide fat which can give texture to products. So this is something which industry needs to learn, and people also need to learn. Uh, the third point which industry actually uses a lot, that is that people like it, taste buds, the taste buds are like this. Actually, a lot of and they also say that it is cheaper. Industry says that banaspati ghee is cheaper. When you sell oil without partial hydrogenation, it is expensive. But when you partially hydrogenate it, you do it, you process it, then it becomes cheaper. Actually, the difference is only 5 or 10 rupees per kg. It's not a lot of difference. Secondly, actually, we need to improve production of local oils like canola, like corn. And this is where Ministry of Industries is very relevant. And also our financial sector is relevant. Uh, all policies actually have to go in sync with one another to get desired results. So your banks must be willing, or there should be a business case, or they should examine a business case that lending money to a farmer who has canola crop, they can have this machinery and produce oil as well. So they will have a better product, And I tell you, the waste of that canola processing, when you extract oil, that is actually good for animals as a feed. So there's the higher in protein content. So your animals are fed up on higher levels of protein, and you get better protein in meat as well. So high quality meat. So there is a win-win situation, rather win-win and win situation for the business sector. You just need to explore market potential and markets within countries. So you have to produce better quality oils within Pakistan rather than importing palm oil from other countries, and change of technique, and plus telling people that this taste not does not matter when the questions of health, and these taste buds can be trained actually. If you start using tea without sugar, then your taste buds are within a week trained for new food. So these taste buds are not really, uh, I think, is a
Right.
very well improvement. Yeah, that is my point. So,
So,
thank
so
you.
I have a few follow-up questions. Thank you so much for elaborating it, particularly the social behavior aspect of it. So, my follow-up question is that you mentioned a lot about technology, that we need to, bring in new technology. So, again, my question is that who is bearing the cost of it? Because I am pretty sure that Pakistan does not have the capacity to, create their own technology. Of course, there will be some import costs involved, and we know the current business atmosphere is really volatile. It's really not, the picture is really bleak, right? So who is bearing the cost, and how much is the consumer going to bear the brunt? Because when I am thinking of the whole demand and supply chain, the very first thing that comes to my mind is, are these quota restaurants, right? And the scale at which they are expanding, the rate at which the oil is consumed in the at these dhabas, right? And they are, I think, one of the major players. So are we exploring potential with engaging such people at the grassroots level to really propel that demand side, that the demand is emerging from the grassroots level, rather than engaging the ministries only and the key players? Are we thinking about it? Because Koita restaurants, they have their own association, they are very strong in that sense. So are we thinking about it?
Yeah, thank you very much. Uh, Actually, we are in the process of conducting an evaluation of the cost of this technology transition. So far, our food technologists, they say that the cost is not enormously high. All these industries, they can actually they can change their techniques, and it is not enormously high. It's not prohibitively high. What actually, you cannot really allow people to be antisocial, because it is otherwise it will be costly. So you have to have uh, what is in the best interest of people. Is it the industry, a few people who are earning money by selling poison, or uh, earning profits by selling poison, or the people who are consuming the life and their economic activity of whole bunch of your country, which is consuming unhealthy stuff. So to me, if I have to decide, I will decide in favor of the people who consume it. The cost, actually, it will not, because the same companies who produce oil and sell in the market, the same companies produce ghee, and their ratio is around 40-60. 60% they produce oils, and 40% they produce ghee. They partially hydrogenate the oil. So what we are saying to the industry is, don't partially hydrogenate it. Sell oils. You already sell oil. Don't process it. So we are not saying that don't do it. We don't be out of business. What we are saying is, do the right kind of business, and your profits are there. So, to my understanding, the price implication of the in other words, the food security argument, it will not make people food insecure. Especially if you start consuming less amount of fats, it will save money. It will save your health. So the second point which you raised is perhaps even more important in this context, that we should engage with consumers. We should raise awareness amongst the people, and especially amongst doctors too. I have seen doctors who do not prescribe these healthy habits, or they do not tell their patients, they do not educate them about dietary risk factors. I spoke to, this is being recorded, but okay. Uh, I spoke to some high government officials who were in charge of the health system in Pakistan. They did not know that ITFA has implications for cardiovascular health. So, if a level of awareness is, this is a measure of level of awareness amongst the policymakers or decision who guardians of public health is like this, then we have a lot of worries to think about at the common man's level. So, engagement with consumers, telling them this higher consumption of oils is injurious to health, uh, is very important. And perhaps mainstream media. Actually, the problem is that some of the channels are owned by ghee industry, so they do not actually advertise this thing. What they advertise is that our oil is better, it has vitamin A and D, so people start consuming more oil because it has A and D. So these are challenges before us actually. Uh, s- One of the ways to control is, alongside public awareness and engaging with dhabas, and actually everywhere where breakfast is served with higher quantity of ITFAs and fats. So this is really very challenging. Quetta dhaba included. Uh, at the same time, we need actually, we need to engage at all levels. But I would say that this is like a war. You need air force, you need infantry, you need topkhana, you require paratroopers, you require everything, so that, and you should know from where fire is coming. So you have to build your shields around that. You have to have good policies. You have to do everything. uh, so to my understanding, the evaluation of cost structure is also very important. That if you consume 25 kg of oil per year per person, how much it will cost, and if you reduce it to 4 to 5 kg per person per year, how much will it cost? So you will still have a lot of room to buy even expensive oil, although government should provide oils at a cheaper level. But by providing oils at cheaper price means you are encouraging consumption of oils. So it's a tricky question, that whether you should really subsidize, even though, although we requested Ministry of Industries not to subsidize uh, 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 partially hydrogenated oils, but to subsidize oils. But they still raise this question, that are you okay that if we subsidize oil, do you think that we should subsidize oils? So this is a serious question, that you should not actually subsidize oil, but because of political reasons, you subsidize at least two things. One is sugar, and the second is oils and fats. Oils did not include even for the Ramzan package. Most probably they have included partially hydrogenated oil, but they said that they will think about, and they will talk to the Prime Minister, and they will have a discussion around it. So final decision is still pending. So, to my understanding, the argument of industry, that who will bear the cost of the technology transition, who bore the cost of bringing wrong technology in Pakistan. So those people who actually benefit, they make profits. They also share, those who take benefits, they also share the costs. We use roads, we pay road tax, and higher levels of damage you cause to roads like trucks, you pay more tax. Unlike bicycle or cars, you pay lesser
Right.
amount of tax to bicycle. So that is the point. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for answering the question. It was very helpful.
I think we are just in time. It's going to be seven. Sorry, 5:10. And thank you so much, Zubair Sab. Actually, that was very, very informative. I certainly learned a little bit about the industry as well and the process. And we just want to thank you again for coming on board and for having this discussion with us. And we do hope to stay in touch. And if anybody does have any follow-up questions, you can email me, and we can also connect with Zubair Saab as well. So thank you so much again to everyone for joining. All right. I think with that, we will close the session.
Yeah, thank you very
Take
much for
care.
providing me this opportunity to talk. Thank you very much. So nice of you and nice listening.
All right. Take care, everyone. Allah Hafiz.